Hello and welcome to this video. I'm going to introduce to you a tool, which is basically an Excel file, a set of Excel sheets for managing an account and evening the king's return. So this does basically three main things. The first thing is calculating how much resources you have based on different reward boxes in your inventory and opened resources as well, and to plan your building construction based on it. Then you can use that information also to see how much troops you can train in different tiers. And finally, to set your PvP March presets. And the information between these three sheets are basically interconnected. So first, a disclaimer. When I made this, it was just for my personal use, and I started right small for the RSS part. Then I expanded on it over time, and now I thought, well, it is at a stage that, well, other players can also use this and it can be useful for them. There are enough things you can tweak around it to, for your personal needs. So at the time, I didn't know of any other tools out there, but I know now that there are. Different players have came up with different types of spreadsheets for doing different things, and also online you can find some tools. So I'm gonna first show you some of the things out there, and maybe those are enough for some of your needs. You don't really need to use this file, but then I'm gonna explain how it differs from those. So for example, this website Terra Games has different tools and calculators for you, right? For example, you have this resource calculator that is here. You can, put your open amount of food, different numbers for different boxes here, and it tells you how many in total you have, right? But then if you want to keep this for future, you will have to basically become a plus member. The same thing, a similar thing is here for building construction. You can actually, let's say, use this and say, okay, I want to upgrade my archer camp from level 35 to level 40. Tells you what the requirements are. So you need to keep, of course, at level 40 and also archer tower. So, okay, I can add this to the list and then say, okay, my archer tower is also at level 35. So I have to bring this up to 40 as well. I see here that it needs walls, right? So I need to bring up the walls to level 40 as well. Let's say my walls are at level 39 right now, so I add that as well. So here going from 39 to 40. Okay, and here I can see how much of different resources I need. In total, I need 144 billion food, for example. So this is useful, but again, this can be just a one-time thing. For me, I really wanted to plan things ahead of time and know, okay, what is the sequence of building upgrades I want to do in a longer time. So I just have them, I already know them, I don't need to think about it again, and I just want to track how much resources I have, how much I need. You can also do things for your March, for example, March size calculator here. Right? It takes some information from you, like what is your VIP level, what's your rank, do you have a war horn or not, then what is your general buff, right? So this is not very, very accurate, and then it's not that easy to tweak, at least for my preferences. Then you can also do a March preset, and let's say you want to do a Archer March. Your March size is 4 million, and you have troops of up to T14. So this is quite simple. Actually, it just tells you just put 1000 per layer per type. Just calculates the numbers for the top three tiers. So this is a good starting point, but honestly, I could already do this and add 1000 for everything and then just distribute the remaining of the march size over those three. And yes, you can do it as well for the troops, for the resources needed. You can say, okay, I want to train T-14 mounted 1 million, and also I want to do some archers, 500,000, and then calculate the total, how much resources per type I need, and how much power is gonna add to my power. So these are useful, and if you just want to do these, you can actually use this, or you can pay, you can apparently just save and load in different devices and keep track of this. Okay, but now let's go to the file that I'm going to explain how to use. So the first thing, let's go and talk about the RSS. So one thing about this file, let's as an intro, is, okay, anything you see that the text is in blue means that you can edit those cells, right? You can modify those. But the things that are black text are protected. Basically, the file is locked. You can unlock it. The password to unlock it is in the actual file written here. So if you wanted to change the formulas, you can of course do it. The idea here is to fail safe the file, right? So you don't suddenly mess up a formula somewhere and you don't know what the formula was. You have to go back to, recover the previous version of the file or something like that. So it's the idea is to protect those. And then just to highlight the main things in the files, wherever you have a header in with the background that's green, it means there are inputs, and then the main outputs that are probably of interest are with a yellow background. I briefly explained some use cases here, but that's what I'm gonna go into more detail here in this video. So let's go here for the resources. So the idea is kind of the same as what you saw in Terraria games. So here I allow for three different farms. So you can actually have like, alt accounts that you want to transfer the resources from to your main, or you want to plunder them. You can also include them here, and you can keep track of those separately. If you have more, you can still use this. You can just, use one form as a combination of multiple ones. So here on the left, you can see these toggles, the plus. So I can open up the details for each account, right? So you need the main account for sure. So the current level here means your opened inventory. So if we go to the game up here, you have the numbers, right? At any point in time, anywhere in the game, you see these numbers. And if you have, higher levels, I have just done some troop training, so they're low. You see pretty much the accurate numbers. But if you wanna see the actual exact numbers of how many you have, you can just do upgrade on any random building, and then it shows you the exact numbers here, right, up to the last digit. So now I can see that I have 34,388,932, right? I mean, depends on how accurate you want to be, but like if you have 1.7 billion, it could be from 1.65 or 1.69. That can make a difference in some cases, so it's good for you to know the exact values. So you put those numbers here in the first row, right, for the four different types of resources. And then you have the different boxes that you can have, going from the biggest to the smallest, and it's kind of because of the level of importance. Basically, it doesn't really matter. These last two usually don't make a big difference. It's usually like the 10-100K boxes are the ones you probably have a lot of them from, Ymirs and other buses. So for that, you can just again click on this top part of your screen. For each type of resource, you see how many boxes you have, right? So you can come and say, I don't have any 5 million ore, but I have this many 1 million. You just need to input those into these cells, right? So for your main accounts, the safe resources also matter, right? You can use them, but for the farms, you cannot transfer them. So basically, you have the same structure for the farm accounts as well. So you put all those numbers for each of the accounts there. And then you also have the Alliance warehouse. How much do you have? How much are you holding in the Alliance warehouse? This is the last row. I just use that usually for food to protect it from upkeep. But this is the main input. And here what I do to keep track of the safe as well as the unsafe is just I put it here as a formula. And you usually just put, the first number is the unsafe boxes. And when you go down there on your list, you have the safe boxes. I put those, with a plus sign after this. So it already calculates inside. I don't think it's worth, making a separate part for the safe resources. I don't see the value there, but if needed, I might, update the sheet and include that. But as of now, what you need to do to keep track of everything is to add those numbers up here. So then here you can see, okay, in total in this main account, this is how much resources per type you have. Then you can do these if you have alt accounts. And then there are these toggles here that say no, right? You see it's in blue, so it's something you can change. So when you say no, you can see the actual totals here, right? So this is the final numbers, including everything in the farms that you have. And that's the yellow box, right? So if you toggle this from no to yes, it adds those to your total, right? So it's like, okay, I have some resources, but I don't have time to transfer them as of now, so I don't really want to plan based on that. I'm just planning based on only my main account. So I put these at no, right? But again, the same thing, the open boxes, then here you don't want to include the safe resources because you cannot transfer them. And when you are adding these numbers, you need to be careful about the safe, right? So if I click here, it says how much of my current inventory is safe resources. So from a farm, if you have already like opened some safe boxes for anything, then you need to remember that you cannot transfer those, so those numbers should not appear here. You can see I have done this for this case, for example. I had actually a lot of boxes open there to save resources, so it's like, okay, to minus that, right? So just exclude them. And one additional thing that the farms sections have is the protection level. So we cannot take all of the resources out if you're plundering. So for those who have farms that they want to plunder, you need to go into your farm and look at here the food and lumber, stone, or protected levels. The summation of the white and the green numbers is the total amount that is protected. So that is taken into account here as well. So if you put those numbers here, it then tells you how much of it is lootable, right? How much you can loot and how much you can plunder if you attack. And if you're transferring, you can just put 0 as those levels. If it's like a family member account that you're using to transport the resources. Then you can also like estimate your consuming return rewards. So if there's this resources consuming events going on, uh, you can estimate how much of different resources you're gonna get, and do you want to include that in your total or not, right? Sometimes I wanted to do multiple buildings. I knew, okay, after the third one, I'm gonna hit a threshold that I can open more resources. So I wanted to include those to know if I can do more buildings as well. So that you can do as well. So then here is planning for the building upgrades, right? This is the construction section of the file. It's in the same as the resources. As that was my initial intention, was just to plan for this. So here you need to list the different buildings you want to do and the resource requirements for each of them. So you can get these numbers from the same thing we saw here in Terraria Games, right? So from this, you can copy these. If you copy and then go to the file, down here, you can, paste like this, matching destination formatting to not mess up the blue and the commas in there. And it can show up here. So you can do this for one building, but the resource I have been using is from this Evony guide wiki. So for different buildings here, if you go to the building guide, for example, for the key, for everything, you can see these numbers as well for different levels. And then it also tells you what are the requirements, the prerequisite buildings to include there. So I generally just do the same thing, copy these numbers, and then put them in the Excel file. So again, you can see the same thing that we saw as an example on the website. So it's like going from Archer Tower 35, basically Archer Camp 35 to Archer Camp 40, and all of the requirements. You see we have all of this food, which is that same number, right? 144 billion in total for food. So this is an input. These are the blue ones. And then here, for each row, it shows you, okay, if you do this upgrade, how much of your total resources from up here will be left, right? That's good for planning for other things, which I'm going to show you. Is we're going to basically, the file takes these numbers to the troop training, because troop training, you can do smaller amounts, but generally buildings are, require big amounts of resources. The buildings are the first thing that the file considers. So here you can see I start with 20 billion, and if I do this Archer Tower, I'm going to go down to 18 billion. And then it goes down, 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 all the way to here. And then when it gets red, it means I don't have enough, and that number is what I currently lack, right? So right now, if I'm at this point, this tells me if I really want to get to this Archer camp, this is how much resources per type I need, right? I need like 166 billion stone. And I can see food is the less concerning one for this, but stone is the most, the one that I'm lacking the most. So I need to work on that a bit more. But then it also gives me an idea of how much I would need, right? Okay. So, okay, for gold also, we have the same thing up here. So if you open up the section for the main accounts, you can also put the different gold boxes here. Gold is not an issue. You can already just open everything. And because gold is used in so many different parts of the game, I have these two cells that is just, okay, what is your estimate of your research needs that you're going to use? You don't want to, the idea for that is to do training for higher tier troops that need gold. And then you can say, okay, what are the other needs you estimate, like for refines and everything else that needs gold? Then it takes the remaining one up to here, and then it is transferred for your troop training. Okay, so one thing you may notice here is that this first row is grayed out, right? And you cannot actually edit it. If it's protected and you try to edit this, you get this error message. The reason for that is, okay, what if you don't want to do any building upgrades and you just want to use all of your inventory for troop training? So this column here, this stop column, is used to transfer the remaining to the other file, to the other sheet. So with this, I can say, okay, so if I want to plan for these, I want to go up to, let's say, Archer Camp level 37, and that's where I want to stop. So I put stop here. You have to have just one stop in this column. And then the file is going to say, okay, this is what is going to remain after my building upgrades. And then for my troop training here, you can see up here about my inventory. It says, okay, after my upgrades, I'm going to have this much inventory and this much gold. The gold is directly from here. Buildings don't need gold, so it directly goes, but then the numbers from this row with stop are going to be transferred. That's if you want to use these numbers there. It's useful. So if you don't want to do any upgrades, the first row that is empty can be used. You can say, okay, for now, I don't want to do anything. In terms of buildings, I just want to use all of my inventory for troop training. So before we move there, I can show you some extra stuff down here. They're not super useful. So one thing, there is this section here. So you can add this many buildings. If you need more, you need to unlock the file, and then like if you just add rows, insert rows here and copy these formulas down. So if I remove this, this is gonna look like this. So the formula just populates if you have values in there. And also one thing you need to be careful about in the whole file is that if you wanna, let's say I did some upgrades. So these are out of the picture now, right? So I already upgraded these, but my longer term plan includes the next buildings. So here I get this issue, I get the error, right? So I need to have the first row with some values. So what can I do? So you might think, okay, I can just select these and cut and paste up here. Don't do that. Don't ever cut the cells because these formulas are gonna just get messed up. Uh, that's how Excel formulas work because I haven't made these, um, you know, with respect to the distance and everything. It's just directly with this cell. So if you move this cell, it's still gonna use this cell in this row. That's the reason. So anyways, just what you need to know is don't cut. You can instead copy. So if I'm like removing these three, these four, I'm gonna copy everything else below, right? Control C or just, copy and then paste it on top of the first row. So I will have these, repeated because now the four that removes from the top are the four that remain here. I just simply clear these and delete these values and I get the updated list, right? Without cut and paste. So if you do copy, if you want to move any numbers around from your inputs, use copy and paste instead of cut and paste. All right, so that's the main thing here. I have also is just for my own use down here about like event rewards. It's mostly for myself to just track the changes in track my performance in different, weekly or bi-weekly events we have, like the emirs, like these are the number of boxes we got, and this is the estimate of the main rewards that I usually look forward to. I haven't included like refined stones here. There are also other things that I haven't included. It's just as I said, it's not a important part. It's just to keep track of things. And also you have this here, which is your hourly production. So if you want to just say, don't be active in the game for a while, you just want to, log in every 12 hours and collect the in-city resources. You can put those numbers up here. So I have included like multiple accounts. If you want to do, you can just add them up here as a formula. But then how can you get that number is if you go to your Monarch here, details for resources, you get this hourly production for each of them, right? You put that number in the Excel file as this, calculates, okay, what is your 24-hour production if you do collect them before the 12-hour limit? And then if I have some upgrades planned, so I want to stop here, which is how much this is the total amount I need for that plan. And it should tell me how many days of production would be needed if it is negative. So if I want to stop here, right, I'm gonna lack the first three types of resources. I'm gonna need more. And it's telling me if I'm not doing any buses or anything, just in-city production, it's gonna take this many days for each of these to recover. I rarely even look at this. It's for earlier stage in the game that I cared about this at some point, so I added it. All right, so that's for this resources and building upgrades. Now let's move on to the next one, which is troop training. So as we had a glimpse on it before, this sheet, first thing it does is bringing the numbers of your resources up here. So you might want to say, okay, I don't really want to spend the time and put in every single reward box, unopened resource box that I have. I just know roughly how much resources I have. You can actually come here and, click opening these and remember these numbers, add them up in your mind, like how many billions, right? It's like, okay, 1.4 plus, I don't know, 17, and I don't know, plus 4.7. Then you know roughly how much you have, right? If you want to do a quick estimate of how many troops you can train, you can, instead of relying on this, you can just put these manually in this row. That's why you have this in green. And then you can choose which numbers you want to use, the manual inputs or the ones that were brought after the upgrades from the other sheets. Then the first thing to look at is this box. So it is one of the key outputs. It tells you what is the maximum number of troops per tier per type that you can train based on the input you provided or you are using from the other sheet as your resource amounts. So now I'm using the manual numbers. Let's say I have 5 billion of everything, including gold. Then I can train this many T15s, right? It's the same for all of them because all my resources are the same value. Let's say I have more ore. I have 10 billion ore. Then my cavalry number is twice as the other ones, right? So I can train 400,000 T15 cavalry. As you can see, I don't have T16s here. Well, because like if you can train T16, you probably don't need my help on this file. So this gives you an initial idea of okay, how much troops you can train, right? You can start planning based on that. You say, okay, I want to start training at more T1 Cav layer. I can do 62 million actually, right? Then you can start putting your plan here, right? This column is the main one that you basically decide what is your planned number for training different troops. You can use these as a first starting point. Say, okay, I want to train 800,000 T15 ground, this many T13. Let's add in some siege here as well. So this is the only column here that is in blue, right? Because that's the only input you have. Sorry, this column. And then here you will have your current number of troops. If you wanna, what I myself do usually is I like round numbers. So I'm like, okay, I have 3.2 million. I want to go to 3.5. Right? So I do 300. It tells me, okay, if I do this much, how much will be my final number? As you can see, these are not blue, so your current numbers don't come in this sheet. It's actually from the March setup sheet that we're going to look at later, but you have this table here. It's easier to actually input your different troop numbers, current levels, current numbers of troops. You have different tiers in this, and then they're taken up here. So you have a picture of how many of each you have when you want to do your plan, right? So usually it's a combination of how much you can do and how much you have. So, and you can see how much will be your final number and how much power increase that's gonna result in. And down here, you can, if you want, you can say what is your current total power. And after this training, this will be your final power, and this is the rounded number. So what if uh, so as I said, you do a starting point with these numbers, but it doesn't use all of your inventory. But well, you can actually go beyond that, right? So let's say if I want to do, I don't know, 8 million cavalry, I don't have enough. So what happened there? So here is the after taking this into account and planning, it tells you, okay, for this plan that you currently have in this column, this is how much of different resources you need. And the next one tells you the slack, right? Based on your input, and then what will be needed to train these. So let me remove this. So I had 5 billion. Okay, this needs to be updated. So this is already, I will fix this in the final file because let's see. Yeah, that is not, that doesn't depend on this that I recently added. So if you're using the after upgrades, it should be fine. Tells me, okay, I have 20 million, 20 billion, sorry, and for this plan here, I will be using 19.9 billion of that. My remaining food will be this much. And this table is basically the same as this table, but just uses this slack as the input. Says, okay, now with the remaining ones, remaining resources, how many troops you can train. This allows you to then tweak your initial numbers. Say, okay, for this, I will still be able to do some like T1s, right? I want to add, let's say, T1, I can add 7 million with these same numbers. So you can play around and see uh, what is possible and how much you will need more if you have a certain plan. So that is the main thing here. So some extra stuff again. So for myself, because sometimes you have to do many rounds of training, I want to have an idea. So you can put your capacity, current training capacity here. So if I want to train grounds, my capacity is this number, right? 24,626. So if I put that here, this is not updated as you can see because I don't use it that often. Then you can say, okay, how many I want to train, and it tells me, okay, how many rounds do I need? And then this one is telling me I need 19 rounds, and after that, I need to train 19,237 more because this is less than the capacity, so it's less than 1 round. It's just to get a picture of how much your thumbs are going to be used. And then one other thing that I care about is the resource consuming return thresholds. So if we go to the game, let's do this, and the valuable events all the way down here is ongoing right now. It's the resource consuming, right? So you have these thresholds. Now there's like 5 billion, 10 billion, you will get these rewards. So I try to plan my resource consumption around those. So I pass them and I'm not like I don't end up using like 9 billion stone and miss the next threshold rewards. I just throw in some like seed training to get that done as well. So I have used Pro here to use. You can use actually Excel solver and data. You need to add this. It's another topic. You don't really need to do that. That's for my own preference that I want to like optimize the exact numbers roughly of not going above those thresholds at all. But even without that, you can use this and say, okay, if I go to the events again, you have your current levels of consumption because you know you use the resources in many different things, like you have healed a bunch, and this shows you how much you have currently used, right? 6,848,000,000, blah blah. So I can take that number, put it here. Okay, this is how much I've used so far, and then the construction consumption comes from the previous sheet. So in our current plan, we didn't want to do any construction, but let's say we do this. So there is some consumption from there, and then I put my goals here, right? I have made these as inputs as well. So this is currently the formula brings those numbers, but you can just, if you are using the online tool, you can just copy those numbers here. What is your plan to be used for construction? Then if you want to reach this, it tells me I need to consume this much more, right? my current construction and what I have consumed so far, if these are the inputs, to get to 20 billion, I need 4 more billion. And here it shows the training plan, right? So this is just to make sure. So if I want to really hit this, I can try to tweak my training numbers so that I will have like 4,886,000,000 used food, right? And then here is the final. So if I wanted to go to 20, then if I do all of this, I will actually go up to 34. I can pass the next threshold as well. All right, so I think that's all for this sheet. In the version that will be in the link of the description in this file, I will fix this part as well. So the values of manual will also correctly be transferred here. All right, so now let's move on to March setup. Before that, I'm just going to show you this is also an extra thing. This is for speedups. It's the same idea as the resources. It's just different uh, counts of these speed up items that you have, like how many 7-day common speed up you have. You put these here, it gives you an idea of okay how many minutes and how many days of that you have. I don't use this that often, but it might be useful for some of you. Okay, so now for March presets. So here I tried to make it easier to calculate the March size for myself. So you have basically 4 sets of inputs. First of all, your available troops. So this takes into account how many troops you currently have. So if you're planning for something, for some layering, scheme that I call it, but you don't have enough, let's say T14s, T12s, how can you manage that, right? It basically gives you a suggestion for that as well. So if you don't have enough for certain layers. So you put the numbers of available troops, so you know where to get them, right? You go to your March spot here, your troop details. The second numbers are how many you currently have. You might want to heal everything, so these numbers are, you don't have any wounded troops, so you can have the exact numbers here. So this is, and then you can see some of these are red. I think the threshold was around under 10,000. So if you have less than 10,000 of something, it will be highlighted in red because that's basically a minimum you will need for, enough layers. That was at least for myself. I want to have like, enough layers for 3 different marches or have 2 marches out and still have some layers in the city to defend. That's you need at least that much, but for a good defense, you need much bigger layers. Mine are not good at the moment. Anyways, so that's one input. You have your available troops here. Then the other one is about your march size info. Up here, up right, to be able to calculate the exact numbers of march size, depending on different factors, because you can have your war horn on or off, you can set different levels of march size buff, and you can improve your officer and all that. I've tried to make it easier to make those changes that can be shorter term than the more permanent ones. So here, first the base number, right? Because a lot of your march size buffs are percentages, and those are percentages applied to your base march size. So where do you get this number? As stated here, you need to go to your rallying spot, press details, that I button, and then this white number here is your base march size, right? So at level 40, it's 550,000, right? So you put that number here. And then your horn is basically depending on the level, right? If you go again to the monarch here for the horn at level 8 is 20,000. If you go to level 9, it's going to be 24,000. That's that. Okay, then for the different troop types, for the specific generals that you're using, you will have to put the march size numbers here. But that is if none of these are basically applying these other things. So if you don't have any officers in your rally spot, you don't have any march size buffs on, and you don't have the war horn on. So to do that, you can just unassign your duty officer and make sure you don't have a march size buff on and your horn is on something else. Then go to setting a march preset. So assuming those hold, so now I don't have the war horn, I don't have any march size buff on. So if I go to set a preset, I select my main generals, I can see the march size down here. So currently I do have the officer and the officer buffs. Uh, I'm not removing them right now, but you get the idea, right? So you look at this number and then you put that number in this. So those were my main archer generals. And then you do the same for the 4 different types. So this is the second set of inputs you need. Excuse me. Then, okay, you also need your layering goals. Basically, what should your preset, what should your march look like? So the numbers I have here are taken from some suggested numbers. I actually put the link here. There are different sources, a bit of different suggestions, but this is the one that I'm basically taking. I'm trying to use the advanced presets that tries to mess up with the enemy defense a little bit. They mostly include like 10,000 T14 ground. So I have tried to include that as well for the other types. So let's first talk about this part. So for the top tiers from T12 to T15, you need to put percentages, right? So this is the percentage from your total march size that your goal is to have of that tier. So for Archer, you can see based on what we know, or at least what I have learned, it should have the highest T12, should be the biggest layer. So I say, okay, 46% of my march be T12, then 24 T13, and then around 19% T14. I don't have any T15s as of now. So as you can see, these sum up to 89% around that. So these shouldn't be 100 because you need to leave room for your layers, right? So I'm using around 3,000 layers. I use a bit more for calves. That's just some. I've been trying to play around with the layers. And for the same type, for the archers, I use larger layers, 10,000. So this will be the setup. So these are the filler layers, as we tend to call them. This means for the same type, anything below T12 is gonna be taken from this number. So this one is Archer, so it will be 10,000 Archers T11 down to T1. And for the other ones from T1 to the maximum level that you have, you will take this many, right? So it is gonna be 3,000 if I use Archer here. As you can see in my setup here, so this is the main output. This is the suggested March setup with this goal. So as you can see, I have 3,000 for these. There are some, you can see these two are different. We're going to cover those. And like 4,000 for calves and 10,000 for archer. So, and for siege, I have two options, big siege and small siege. Big siege is generally maximizing T13 than T14. Again, I'm assuming T15 not that many people have. It's difficult to unlock. If you could have done it, uh, don't use this file. That's the summary. But then for small siege, what this tries to do is to fill everything with T11s. That's why all of the first 4 tiers are at 0. And if I choose the type small siege, it is gonna try to use the layering here. I'm gonna explain why we have different numbers here. Basically, that's because I don't have enough troops. Anyways, so what this tries to do, the small siege is for T11s. So you want to have a T11 march, and then if you don't have enough T11, it's going to be T12, then T13 if you still don't have enough. So these are the numbers, these are the filler layers, and then these are the other ones, as I call them. They are taken from the page that I showed you for those specific tweaks. So if you don't want to have them, you can see some numbers here are in blue, the rest are in black. So the formulas are not gonna, if you change the tier of this, it's not gonna be taken into account. Sorry. But then the idea here, so S is siege, A is archer, G is ground in these. So here for my archer preset, I'm gonna have 3% T11 siege. So what happens for my archer setup, as you can see, it is giving me 3% of this, which is 110,000, right? And then I want to also have 10K T14 ground. You can see that's why we have this 10K here. So as I mentioned, the T14 ground is also included in Cav and Siege. So these are not blue. So if you want to change this, you can say, okay, that's a bit too much for me. I want to go with 1K. So if I change this, these other ones also change, and you can see here, it actually doesn't do 1K because my filler layer was 3K already, right? So it takes that one. So if I say instead 5K, this will be 5,000. So here K will be interpreted as 1,000, but it is case sensitive, so it should be small k. And if you don't want to use these, you can just put 0. Don't remove the k's. It will mess up the formula. I can use this also as 0. So it is just gonna take my filler layer number. So it's 3,000 all across, 3,000 all across. The same here for the small, you will have you want to include some T12. That's the suggestion was to have 100K. So I'm putting 100K here. The same thing as before. That's what it's gonna try to do. So what happens if you don't have enough troops here, right? So these are the benefits that I think this file has over that like static web-based March preset suggestion. It allows you to tweak these things a little bit more. And so I put these as March settings. This is like, because these are the things that you can more easily change. Let me cover these as well. So the main thing you will be playing around is the troop type, right? So for archer, ground, cav, big siege, and small siege, it changes your outputs. Then your officer level, what level it is, junior, medium, senior, special, or super. Then who is your officer? I have added Zhang and Toyotomi. I think there is a better one, but I haven't come across it myself, so I haven't included. If it is someone else who doesn't personally have an extra buff, right? I have this other, so it's like just some general who is enough to get to super level, but it doesn't personally add a buff in its main skill. It should be other, right? So I have Zhang, and it is at super level, and I have actually worked on its specialties. So one thing to note is, so if I bring my duty generals, here he is. So this one applies, but remember that it only applies if it says apply to rally spot officer, right? So I have done this, it adds 6% to march size, given that he is the officer and this is applied. And you get this 8% also if you choose Zhang in the dropdown. Also, if I work on the first two and maximize them, I can unlock the fourth one. This one also adds march size and apply to rally spot officer. So that's why you can manually add the number there. Toyotomi has the same thing. If you work on his third and fourth, it can add to your march size. So those are the things I've included in the file. So I have 6% from that specialty, it's young, and then let's say I'm using a medium march size buff, right? So it can be non-junior, medium, or senior. And then I don't use the war horn, so it's unknown, right? So I can change these settings to see different results. Let's say this is what we're going with. So here it takes these layering goal from this main input table, the main ones, not the other ones. So I wanted to have, because I don't have T15s, I have 0. So 46, 24, 19%. And this is the actual one. So the suggested output tries to match your goal as much as possible, but it may not succeed, right? Because you might not have enough troops to actually do that. Let's say I don't have that many T12s actually. Let's say I have 1.2 million, right? So now you can see what I actually achieved is 33% in T12s. So what this tries to do is for archers, because it needs to be less top heavy, T12s are prioritized. So it starts to fill up from down up. It's the same idea. So let's say I do have enough, but now my T14s is this much. Let's say I only have 400,000, right? So what happened is that it instead tried to fill, I don't match this 19% in T14s. What it tries to do is to fill that gap with some T12s. Again, you don't have to like stick to the exact numbers, but this is kind of trying to solve the issue of not having enough troops for that layer. And for Crown, Cav, and Siege, for Big Siege, what it then tries to do is to fill from the top, right? So it prioritizes filling from the top. If you don't have enough, goes to the lower tiers. For example, here, I want to have 30% T15s. I don't have that. I only have 800,000. So my actual is 22%. But then between these two, T14s are prioritized. I had enough to fill a bigger layer. So now I have 44% of my march in T14. One thing to note is that you can actually go above 100% if you add too many here, right? So if I put this also 25%, my total march size here is this, but then the march setup suggested actually goes beyond that. So if this becomes red, it means you have surpassed your march size. So you need to play around with the numbers to make sure you don't go above that. If if you are below that, it tries to fill the march with the highest priority tier. But if it's above that, it's just gonna have a bigger march. So for you also to make sure you have put these numbers correctly, I forgot to say this before, you should look at this. So this should be the final march size you see with all the settings applied, right? So for my archer march with a medium march size buff, I should have this exact march size. This is what the plan is gonna be for, right? So this is based on these marches. So I think that covers everything in the file. If you have any questions or suggestions, uh, please let me know in the comments. Or if you know me personally, reach out to me. If I have time, I might update things, but I think because it requires quite some time to make changes, I think it's a good enough, at least starting point for many players to start, plan for stuff and get some better PvP March setups. That's it, and thank you.